I'm going to turn to introducing folks. I'm going to start to your far right. Sheena Boughen is the former chair and life ambassador. What a title. Life ambassador of Four Winds Bermagui, where she oversaw the reimagining of Four Winds as an organization and the creation of the exquisite Four Winds site, Nature's Concert Hall, which provides outdoor and indoor facilities of international standing and has been the driving force in attracting significant private philanthropy, philanthropic support, and grants from both the state and federal governments. Sheena's approach in developing partnerships and networks forms a strong movement and commitment to participation and engagement. And she was awarded an OAM and the National Arts Leader 2017 Award from Creative Partnerships Australia for her work in this area. Welcome, Sheena, and thank you for joining us today. To her right, we have Ken Crouch. Ken is currently the CEO of Screenworks, which recently relocated from Bangalore to Ballina. And under Ken's leadership, Screenworks has strategically repositioned itself from being a Northern Rivers-focused screen organization in 2014 to becoming a borderless screen industry service provider. I love it. We have Doctors Without Borders. Now we have Screen Service Without Borders. But very importantly, his work in reimagining the organization's focus is a big piece of what we'll hear about today. And that reimagining has delivered events and services that meet changing needs of the regional screen practitioners nationally. By implementing innovative and forward-thinking business models, Screenworks has increased its revenue and its membership base by 200%. And is now supporting practitioners across every state and territory. Welcome, Ken. And to my immediate left, Este. Este Darin-Cooper is currently State Manager of New South Wales and ACT at Creative Partnerships Australia, where she works with artists, arts organizations, and funders to grow private investment and support in the arts. With a diverse career across the public, private, not-for-profit, and artistic sectors, Este brings a great breadth and depth of experience in building sustainable, effective, and resilient organizations. And she's been deeply connected to the arts and funding community in many ways, as an advisor, as a board member, as a philanthropist, and as an advocate. Previously, she was the Director of Venture Philanthropy at Social Ventures Australia, where she partnered directly with funders and early-stage ventures to resource and grow more effective models for addressing disadvantage. Welcome, Este, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. Fantastic. I'm going to now turn to a few questions so we can hear from our fantastic panelists. Sheena, I'm going to start with you, if I may. The Four Winds story. It is a particularly inspiring one, especially in a discussion about what it means to rally one's community. The transformation of Four Winds into the nationally recognized organization it is, with facilities of international standard and a fishing village of now 1,600 people, is remarkable as an understatement. Can you share a bit with this audience? Did you have a clear a plan on which you marched forward, or did this evolve over time? And was your approach to building early interest and momentum within your community in Bermagui something you can give a little more detail to for this group?
Thanks, Elizabeth, and hello everybody, and thank you for coming. We know it's the end of the day, so we're grateful to see more than 3 people. And Elizabeth, welcome to Create New South Wales. I think we're all glad to have you. So it's terrific. I thought that I might just help answer that question by telling you a bit about context, because I think everybody's story has to relate to where you're at and when you're there. And it sort of, I think, helps explain that we weren't wonder kids, but we were pretty ordinary, but extraordinary in our desire to do something. So we're ordinary in terms of what we care about, which is collective in this room. But I think as a community, and I don't just mean geographically, that Four Winds did some things that together have made us extraordinary, and it's shared by many people in Australia and around the world. So firstly, just the context. Yes, I wrote so many grants with others that I know there were 1,572 people in Bermagui when we wrote so many grants over the years. I was a founding member of Four Winds in 1991, and our start mattered for you to know. We believed, and Neil McGantner was our founder, who's a member of the Meyer family, and she lived in Bermagui. We believed that we should have high quality, world-class classical music where we live. So we said we shouldn't have to go to a regional centre or to the capital or to turn on the radio. We want it live where we live. And it started off with a group of 8 of us who Neilma brought together, and we put it on with a commitment to the highest quality national and international, the highest quality of place, and I'll tell you what that looked like. It was a paddock. And the highest quality of intention to encourage an artistic life in our fishing village that was fishing, farming and forestry. Low income, $32,000 a year average, only 35 now. A high proportion of kids who left school at year 10. Indigenous community that did not connect very well with the town, a bit through the school, a bit through health, and certainly disadvantaged in many pockets. We're a beautiful coastal community in the far south of New South Wales, Sapphire Coast. So we have an abundance of riches that are natural, that really weren't taken advantage of. And we were at war in our community in many ways. So my husband and I got involved with dairy farming, which was a strange feudal world to get involved with. And I was still consulting and working with Greenpeace International overseas at the time. So I was going from Greenpeace Japan and Greenpeace Europe to coming home where you couldn't mention green as a colour, let alone an issue. And here we were putting in a dam. So, you know, my Greenpeace friends knew where I lived and what I did, but I honestly didn't tell the locals because I didn't know how to. So it was in that sort of place that, and I'd been a teacher too, so I kind of wondered why it was that in the farming community people said things like everything gets done to us and we're price takers, not price makers. And they had this phrase, a boya on the bones of your ass, for what happened with farming. So I was in this sort of very mixed world, and yet at Bermagui from 1991, soon after I arrived, I was part of this group of people who believed you could do anything anywhere, which kind of suited my approach to life. But how extraordinary it was that I got involved with this group of people, I say saved me, because I didn't feel I belonged there at all. I couldn't smell the coffee machines. You know, there was a hippie hit this here and a farming there, and I didn't fit anywhere. And I didn't have children, so I didn't have that avenue to get involved. And I earn all my money still as a consultant outside of the local area. So the art making and this belief completely made sense for me personally. And I thought if it does for me, it must for lots of others. There must be lots of other people who feel like me, and we don't want to send them away. 75% of 19 to 35-year-olds had left the district, and we didn't know how many came back. So that's just a few minutes on the context. From the beginning in 1991, we got pedigree in the music world pretty quickly because of the quality of our artists, paid them properly, looked after them, welcomed them, and we had a strong culture of volunteers, which they all loved and our audiences loved. So the question really that we care about for this is what happened in 2006. We'd been having these nice events. I got off the board for a little while, came back on actually to set up Friends of Four Winds, because I thought it's time to do something that makes people feel a bit more connected, because 60% of our audience comes from outside of the area. So I thought it seems stupid that they only come every year, by then every second year, and they don't feel connected. And I just felt this, if I have such a sense to belong and make meaning, surely these people would rather, I kind of thought they'd rather be with us than at a Music of Eva concert in Canberra or Sydney. Because we've got a 25-acre site, and I hope you'll go and have a look on the website. It's 25 acres of nature, just almost next to the beach. And it was a natural amphitheatre, and every year, and then second year, we'd bring in all the equipment, and eventually we got a partnership with the Opera House to get good sound equipment because we couldn't afford it. And then we started to say, shouldn't there be something else we do rather than be event managers? And I thought, I became the chair in 2006, and I thought, I don't want to become an event manager par excellence only. You can't live where I live and not do something more, you know what I mean. You have to be embedded and make meaning. And also there was a bit of a them and us. You know, these people, 60% come in and pay for these artists and then they go away. And who are these people coming to our town? So really to answer the questions that Elizabeth's put, I think if you put all that together, it became very apparent that what is it that would be most meaningful for us to do? There's no music education in the schools, and I mean of any form, jazz, hip-hop, classical, anything. There was nothing. And I rang up the education department to ask them about secondary schools, and they said, there's nothing. I felt deeply upset. And I thought, how do we encourage these people to do more if there's no support for them? So we started to think about that role, and Chris Latham was our artistic director, and we got involved. So we started to work and listen and talk with our local community, and we started to think about communities of influence. And who are these gorgeous people who keep coming back from elsewhere and drive just for 3 days of music? We got curious. And then we started to think about, well, we bring everything in, take it all down. That's a bit silly. And then the property does nothing for another 2 years. It sort of seems like a waste. So to cut a long story short, we did a whole lot of series of conversations with musicians, with music makers, with our audience, with our local community. So it was geographically diverse. And I actually went and looked at places like Banff in Canada, Aldeburgh in the UK. I went to Garma in the Northern Territory, et cetera, because I just was curious, how does really saying that culture's integral to life, not an activity, how can that change people's confidence where they live? So I got very curious about that. And as an educator, you have to be, because it worried me that people weren't building confidence and felt a bit at, that arse end of the world they receive. And I found the parochialism overwhelming, personally. I'd got out of Brisbane, Queensland, because I loved growing up there, but I wanted a bigger mindset, not even just world. So I went to a small place, but I wanted to encourage a bigger mindset, and there were lots of people who thought that way. So the essence is that from all the conversations, we said having a place and buildings couldn't be a stronger message of what matters in life, to say we want to become the national home of music making in Australia. So we set up an ecological approach that said every part of the continuum, from writing music to producing to rehearsing to presenting to being an audience to being a volunteer, every bit matters if you want to shift the way we perceive in Australia the role of art and art making. And then we had two architects very involved. One was Philip Cox, who's got a place there, and Clinton Murray, who did. So we just started, and Arts New South Wales were crucial. Mary Darwell, I was in a meeting with a sketch from Philip Cox, because we needed a permanent sound shell just to have a better festival. And she left the room, and I thought, God, she's a bit rude. And she left the meeting, like I'm going blah, blah, blah. And she came back in with somebody, and it was somebody in Arts New South Wales at the time who she wanted us to meet to understand that this was an aspiration that might need listening to. So we basically said to Philip, we want a permanent sound shell. He said, I'll do it for you. And he said, how do I know you can raise the money? And I said, well, I don't know, but we'll work it out. And the story of our success in that area is that we had no culture of giving. Frankie Airy, who some of you will know, was one of our critical people. And I went to Louise Walsh with Sean on our board, and she just believed us. And we said, we don't know how to do this, but we'll work it out. And she said, you need Frankie Airy. She's a philanthropy strategy. And we said, tick, we'll do it. And then she said, go to this one, tick, we'll do it. So we set up a new circle of influence of people we called critical friends, and we learnt. We just decided we were on a big journey. So some of the things we did that really set up how we got the aspiration to do it, we didn't have a major plan, but we had a passionate belief in the power of art making and music making to transform lives. That was what the grand plan was. How we did it evolved, and I would say that never for a second in my 10 years as chair did I not believe in that aspiration, but regularly I would lie in bed and shake with how the heck are we going to do it. So I'm a very strategic, determined person. We had a brilliant group around us, and I was just the enabler of the team. But I really think because of my background in campaigning and as an educator, I knew we had to be bold and radical in our belief. But we did not have a grand plan, but we kept on planning, replanning, and that was all because we had these critical friends, circles of influence, etc., etc. So in the end, to cut a long story short, we launched an appeal. We are only going to do a sound shell to start with. We had a very important starting point, which was simply a private donor who gave us $400,000 as a matching grant. So that gave us a very powerful situation to start. But we had a culture of every dollar matters. So it wasn't about rich people. Does not work in a town like ours. So then we got in another architect, and we then went from having a facility with toilets and loos and kitchen to having a world-class Windsong Pavilion that is now an extraordinary 200-seat performance space.
It's fantastic, Sheena. Can you give a sense of how many individual, not regardless of size, how many individual folks stepped up from your multiple circles and critical
Five circles of influence, I'd say, 337 donors, and I know the name of every single one, and I can't remember them, but we've taken photos so that we try to remember, and that really matters. We value every single one. Mrs. Brown from $50, who also is the best fruitcake maker. Second influence, circles of influence, is the artist. We're very artist-driven. My parents were both professional musicians, so I came from a background of understanding. Third influence was to get everybody in the region, from council to the bookmaker to the bread maker to the everybody involved and feeling like they wore the T-shirt, they're part of it. The third was to go and do massive lobbying ongoing. I mean, my Create New South Wales friends can't help but know us, and we love them, and they came to our place. The fourth circle was to have a group of people who had esteemed influence in the arts, whether they had money or no money, was quite diverse. And the fifth circle simply was really to say who are our audience and our artists. That was a crucial factor, to really believe in artists and audiences, crucial influences.